All right, welcome. It's good to see you. With this segment, I'm going to begin a new series of conversations, and it's going to focus on the notion of what church might look like on the other side. Several years ago, a guy by the name of Brian McLaren wrote a very interesting book about the church on the other side. Now, obviously, all of that was before COVID and the year 2020, but he struck a nerve with a lot of church leaders because he already realized, as most people did, they just didn't know how to express it. He already realized that the church was going to go into some kind of a wormhole, like something in space that the black hole that you go into and you know it's there and you know you're going to have to go into it, but you're not sure what life is going to look like on the other side. People were already beginning to realize large numbers of church leaders were already realizing that there is something that we're going to have to go through and that there is going to be something on the other side, just didn't know what it was. And over the next sessions or so, we're just going to try to paint what that might look like. Now, we'll start with the confession, say nobody knows what that's going to look like entirely. Nobody knows all that's coming, no more than we know what the stock market is going to do tomorrow. Nobody knows what that picture is going to fully look like. But it just so happens that we live in a moment in history in which we are part of it. And there's no way that you can get out of it. No more than you can get out of the fact that the sun will set tonight and rise tomorrow. Tomorrow does come. And churches are trying to, put some hands and words to what all of this means. Perhaps you could picture it like the moving of great tectonic plates. Those are the things that when they move, there's a new landscape or there's an earthquake, or back in the day, continents were formed or oceans were formed. It doesn't happen often to that degree, obviously, but in life, there have also been great movements of history. For example, if you just want to paint as broadly as we possibly can, there is the time of prehistory or prehistoric times, and then there are ancient times, and then there are medieval times, and then there's the modern time. It just so happens that we live now in this great cultural movement from the modern time to what is typically called the postmodern time. Now, there's nothing anybody can do about that. It's not like, you can say that's not going to happen. It happens. And the question and the challenge for churches is not trying to hold back the tidal wave of a cultural movement. The question is, how do we ride that wave? So in that kind of analogy, we can either decide to, be overcome and tossed and turned and destroyed by the wave that comes, or we can figure out how do we function knowing that something like that is coming. How do we plan in light of that, and know that when these tidal waves come, things are rearranged significantly. So in the weeks to come, I'm just going to be talking about, strategies or ways to think about it, ways to help frame the conversation, realizing that there are simply no experts, that what we have, what we feel like we have at most right now is going to be like we got some good glimpses perhaps, or we have some deep hunches perhaps, but we're just going to have to, face this together in both its certainties and its uncertainties. And one of the things that I want you to feel affirmed about is that although we'll be talking about the uncertainties, we'll always be doing so in light of the things that are certain. So just as a really quick reminder, what is certain about all of these things? Well, the love of God is certain, the Bible is certain, the mission of Jesus is certain, his death is certain, his resurrection is certain, the coming of the Spirit is certain, and all of those things are the things that give us hope and make it possible for us to live in this hinge moment of history. So although we're not going to be talking about and focusing on all the things that are certain, I'm going to make an assumption that we all share those things together, and we have a pretty clear understanding of what those things are. I'm going to be talking about the things that are far less certain. Now, there will be, a number of churches will not be able to have this conversation, and the reality is that if they haven't died already, they will die, because they just can't not, even though they have great certain theological claims and they have great statements of faith, and all of that, they can't deal with the uncertainty of culture and how we live out our faith in that culture, how we live out the community of who we are as a church family in that culture. And we're going to have to be able to navigate that and discern that, and I know, quite honestly, sometimes it feels like we're just walking in the blind, but we're not, because of God's not in the blind on this. Now, it will feel like to us that sometimes we are, and we'll feel the uncertainty. It's just like, how from time to time you feel how human we are. We feel, there are days we just feel fragile, and we just feel the weight of our humanity, and we know that we're not going to live forever on the earth and in this present body, in this present form. And there are just days we feel humanity and the weight of that bearing down on us, where churches have to do this. Churches do the same thing. As we go through the shift, as we face whatever lies ahead in the future, churches are going to feel the weight of the humanity of being church, of the uncertainty, of the lack of clear answers to things that we used to have answers to before. And it is unsettling, but at the same time, it's exciting because God is leading us on a new journey. God is taking us to a new place. We're going to just have to know what to hold on to, and I think we know what those things are. The challenge is, however, are we going to be able to know what are the things that we have to let go of? What are the things that we have to release? What are the things that may have been productive and helpful and healthy in the 1960s or the 70s or the 80s or the 90s? But as most things in life, things have a season. And now God has a new season, and sometimes our struggle is going to be on, can we release our grasp on things that have had their season and in so doing, receive what God is doing and where the Spirit is leading. And as you know, if we're holding on to things that we need to let go of, it's going to be impossible to hold our hand out for the new and fresh things that God wants us to have. But it's hard. No one is going to make a case or pretend like it is not an easy thing to do. It couldn't be something like putting a 7-year-old, like I did last summer, on their first roller coaster and riding with them. It really looked fun standing on the ground to my grandson, and he heard people laughing and having a great time, and he saw people getting off and they had fun, and he decided he wanted to ride, and I said, okay, I'll ride with you. And all of that was exciting until we slowly crept up to the largest and first hill right before that big, huge dip. And the closer we got to the top, the less fun that started becoming for him. And then when you get to the top, there's that suspenseful moment in which you just sit there for a brief moment. And as we sat there, I could see the whole thing was shifting for my grandson from, wow, that is going to be fun, exciting, to this is going to be terror. We're going to die. And he couldn't see under him where that track was going. And he wasn't prepared for the wild bends and the corkscrew turns and the upside down thing. And I mean, that was just not in his worldview at the moment. But as he and I sat there atop that first hill, there was not a thing that neither one of us could do about it. There was no way to stop what was already in motion. There was no way to bail out of it. There was no way to get out of it. I mean, he's going to go down that first steep hill. And the moment it started, his hands dug into my forearms. And I wouldn't be surprised if in ultraviolet light, the marks of what he did to me are still present. Well, we got through it all. And when I said to him later in the day, would you like to do that again? It was a firm negative. He's not ready to do that again. In some sense, this is what churches are going to have to do. We have to trust that God knows the track, even when we feel suspended on that hill and we start falling, what feels like to us, into a total free fall, that this is God's story. It's not the story that we invented. It's not the story that we would write. It's God's story. Jesus is still Lord. The Holy Spirit travels with us throughout the entire journey. And once we are settled and we have that very, very firm foundation, we can receive and walk together as a church family through whatever this future is going to look like. So for the moment, just trying to paint the large historical picture that whether we all like it or not, we all, as I guess John F. Kennedy said, we all inhabit this same planet and breathe the same air. We're here at the same time. And we're on the same coaster. And as a church family, there are going to be times in which we feel like, man, we don't know what's coming. We don't know, if we're going to, which side of the seat we're going to be thrown up against. There could even be screaming and yelling as we go down a hill. Who knows? But what we do know is that we are a people who rest on a very simple confession, which is none other than Jesus is Lord. And that's simply not in jeopardy. And so if that's the only thing we have that we can have some confidence in, then so be it. We have plenty enough. So I'm going to just be looking forward to trying to navigate a little bit about what this might look like. For many decades, churches were able to do the same thing over and over again, and it succeed and it be productive. And I know a lot of us wish, as we go through together, a huge change of history like we are in. We wish, all of those things were true again, but I think we all know the simple reality is that they are not. But the good news is God is already on the other side of this shift. He already knows. He knows exactly what he's doing. He already knows how we are going to fare through this whole thing, and he's inviting us to join him. He's inviting us to accept the challenge. He's inviting us to reimagine. He's inviting us to think fresh thoughts. He's inviting us to take steps of faith in places we have never stepped before. He's inviting us to do something we've never done before. And I am looking forward to the opportunity to pursue all of that. If anything, it will not be dull and boring. I mean, of all places, churches, especially as we go through huge cultural shifts, should be some of the most exciting happening in the world. Sharing great stories of how we see God show up, but at the same time being honest enough to allow people to ask deep questions that are rooted in uncertainty, questions that express our fears, and that allow people to say, I don't know about this, I'm not sure about this, this is going to be hard, I didn't realize we were going to have to plunge down this huge hill. That is quite okay. We have each other, and we have each other to love and pray with and journey together, and I think it's going to be an exciting, fantastic journey that we just can't script. We can't plan out no more than we can know what tomorrow's stock market is going to be like. What it's going to mean is that as disciples of Jesus, is that in a sense we rediscover the whole idea of what it means to be a disciple in the sense of learning. We're going to have to be brand new learners. And this is challenging because oftentimes it means that all the stuff that we had learned about church, all the stuff that we had learned that used to work, we might have to let go. And someone wisely said, those who will be able to live through this incredible shift of culture will be the learners. Those who are learned, those who already know it all, will not survive. And there is a tremendous amount of truth in that. For those who have it all figured out, and they know, if we do it in the future like we did it in the past, they are so assured that you're going to get the same results. Those individuals simply will not make it through the huge shift of history, through the huge tectonic shifts of culture. And so there's good news in this, and that is that we all have to go back to what it means to be a learner again. We are all on a learning curve together. There are no experts. And we're going to just have to take each other by the heart and by the hand and fundamentally return, which I think is a very good thing, return to this stand or this posture before God, which says, God, we now know we don't have it all figured out, but we come as followers of Jesus, and we're going to have to learn a whole lot of new things. So, welcome to the new journey of learning. Welcome to the new historical shift of whatever that is going to look like. Welcome to the new ride. Hold on to each other. And together, we're just going to see how God leads in his redemptive mission through all of this. Someone also has pointed out that when there are levels of change, as we're facing, that you can understand those levels of change from easy to difficult. The first level of change is knowledge. That's easy. You can Google something, you can read a new book, you can easily have access to new information. So the easiest level of change is knowledge. The second level after that is more difficult. It's attitude. And we're going to have to put our attitudes before God. We'll have new knowledge and new things that we learn, but then we have to learn how to be open to having our attitudes changed. The next level is behavioral. That is, we're going to have to change our behavior. We're going to have to unlearn some behavioral things and then learn some behavioral things. And that is not an easy thing to do, but that's part of what it means to be a disciple. But there's another level of change, and it is the most difficult of all levels of change. It is the level of organizational change. And that is the one that is the most challenging, because it is hard to get an entire organization to rethink how it functions, who it is, what it does. It is hard to get an entire organization to redream, to, in a sense, reorganize so that God can more fully do what he wants to do. And these conversations are going to challenge us to do that. They are going to challenge us, not, just to learn new things, but it's going to challenge all of us to have new attitudes wherever that might be appropriate. It's going to challenge us to have new behaviors, and it's going to challenge us to think about how do we organizationally, in whatever ways God calls us to do, how do we refashion that? How do we release the organization that was? How do we create? How do we be authentic and honest to the organization, or the part of the organism that allows us to do what God wants us to do? And those are not going to be easy conversations, but those are going to be necessary conversations. And I think, or I'm confident, that as a church family, once we can enter into that conversation together, once we realize, hey, we're sitting in this roller coaster and off we go, so let's see what it looks like. I think once we realize that this is not about us, this is about God, and he's okay with it, and he's already moved on with it. And once we more fully accept the challenge of what it's going to look like, how we're going to even love each other more deeply, and how we're going to connect with people who aren't even part of the ride yet, I think it's going to be an exciting time. So we'll just use this segment as the initial conversation and setting that up. As I mentioned, next week, Labor Day, we're going to just let things relax. I'm not going to produce anything next week. So use it as a time to, reflect and pray and just, hear God. And then we'll be re-engaging the week after Labor Day. I look forward to the journey, and I'm glad you're a part of it.